with David J. Maloney. This week, David talks to Todd Duren of Mobile's Secret History Tours and Nathan Barfield from Turkey and the Wolf with this month's musical guest, Tyler Livingston and the Absolutes. Now here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome to everyone at home and in our studio audience to The Weekly Show. I am your host, David J. Maloney, and to my right, subbing in for the Mogiles, it's Tyler Livingston and the Absolutes. So Tyler, the other day, I went to lunch with this champion chess player. It took him like 6 minutes to pass me the damn salt. And in Cyprus, 2 male prisoners got married behind bars. What is most unusual about this prison marriage is it was consensual. Health officials are warning that pot smoking can cause apathy, but polls show that most smokers really couldn't care less. Tulsi Gabbard is suing Hillary Clinton for $50 million. As a precaution, the Hawaii Congresswoman and presidential candidate says if she's found dead, it wasn't suicide. According to AskMen.com, the best pickup line is, "I just thought you should know that you have a really nice smile." And the worst pickup line is, "Can we just get this over with?" The most recent Census Bureau report indicates 11.8% of American millennials live in poverty. Sadly, due to their limited income, many of them are forced to choose between piercings and tattoos. Nobody liked that. None of the millennial guys in the band liked that joke. They're like, what the? That's not nice. And lastly, Mick Jagger plays an evil art dealer in the upcoming film, The Burnt Orange Heresy. This will be his 27th movie and his 22nd talkie. If you've never seen The Weekly Show before, just keep watching. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. First up, we've got Todd Duren with Mobile's Secret History Tours to chat about his famous walking tours and the history he's learned. And then we've got featured guest Chef Nathan Barfield from what Bon Appetit magazine called the best new restaurant in America, the Turkey and the Wolf. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Tyler? Our first guest tonight takes countless people through tours of the past in the city of Mobile with his Secret History Tours. And he's a goldmine of knowledge about so many amazing true stories that would otherwise be lost to time. Please give a warm Weekly Show welcome to Mr. Todd Durham. Todd, nice to see you wore something subtle today.
Yes, well, I didn't want to overdo it. I'm a little worried I'm going to clash with the sofa here.
Not clashing, but more or less blend in. So you got started in this really kind of interesting, unique type of business. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, walking tours are a trending thing in larger cities, historic cities like New Orleans, for instance. And my wife and I, on vacation, took several of these, and I liked them so much. And I live in Mobile, which is one of the oldest cities on the Gulf Coast, and I think we have just as many stories and interesting things to show people there as in New Orleans. So this is my 3rd year doing the business, and it's going really well.
What are the different types of tours that are available?
Yeah, well, right now I'm doing a Mardi Gras themed tour, and I actually brought you some Mardi Gras beads.
There we go. Might as well throw those on.
Yeah, there we go. And so that's the date on there is 1703, which is the first year that Mardi Gras was celebrated in Mobile.
Goes with my suit.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're kind of in the midst of Mardi Gras season right now, both in Mobile, New Orleans, of course, and here in the Mississippi Gulf Coast. One of the things that and I know that Mobile's got kind of a real interesting history. Before we get into that, one thing that I was wondering, why is Mobile called the Mother of Mystics?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So there's this kind of competition between New Orleans and Mobile. And the fact is that the very first Mardi Gras on the Gulf Coast was actually celebrated in neither place. It was celebrated on the Mississippi River in 1699 by Bienville, d'Iberville, and their crew at a place called Mardi Gras Point. They were looking for a place to build a fort on the Mississippi River. They didn't find it. They ended up making Mobile the very first capital of French Louisiana.
Yeah, because I had always thought, I mean, a lot of people mistakenly believe it started in New Orleans because New Orleans has made it so big, but for the people in Mobile, I'll say it started in Mobile.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
You're saying it actually kind of started on the river and then kind of worked its way down.
Yeah, that's right. Now, what Mobile can rightly claim is the very first celebration in a permanent settlement, right? So that happened in 1703. And then the reason I like to call Mobile the mother of mystics is because American-style Mardi Gras began with mystic societies. That's what we call the organizations that put on the parades and put on the balls. And the very first mystic society was created in Mobile, and that was in 1830, the Calbellion de Racan Society.
I was about to ask you about that. What is that?
Yeah, so a man named Michael Kraft in 1830 was celebrating New Year's Eve. Now, New Year's Eve is the very beginning of the pre-Lenten season, in other words, the whole season of Mardi Gras. And he and his buddies thought Mobile needed to party a little longer than they were used to. So they actually broke into a hardware store, stole some rakes and cowbells, and made a lot of noise and created the first procession on New Year's Eve. The next day...
So they had a fever, and the only prescription was more cowbell.
More cowbell, exactly. That's right. Yeah, so the next day, everybody that had been awakened in the middle of the night said, what was that organization that was making all that noise last night? And they made up a name for themselves on the spot. And they said, we are the Calbellion de Racan Society.
How does Joe Cain fit into everything?
Well, Joe Cain's story comes after the Civil War. So Mobile's very first celebrations with mystic societies, that begins in 1830, but those celebrations are all on the calendar around New Year's in the month of January. And what happens after the Civil War is during the Civil War and the occupation after Civil War in Mobile, Mardi Gras was canceled. Joe Cain was a member of a volunteer fire company in 1867 that got invited to New Orleans for a fireman's parade. While they were there, they probably very jealously were watching the Mardi Gras parades that by that time had become popular in New Orleans. And so they came back. On the way back, they made plans for the next year. And Joe Cain, along with the Order of Myth, the OOMs, began the very first post-Civil War parading tradition in 1868.
Oh, wow. And so, and in Mobile, what is usually Lundi Gras, which is it, Sunday or Monday that they call Joe Cain Day?
Yeah, Joe Cain Day would be on Sunday, and then Lundi Gras is on Monday.
And then they have Lundi Gras, and then there's actually Mardi Gras.
Right.
Now, are there any favorite bits of history that you came upon in doing your research for doing these tours?
There's all kinds of interesting things. One of the things about Mobile that I think is really unusual is that 6 different national flags have flown over the city. That's more than even New Orleans, because we were occupied by the British and New Orleans was not. So that's one thing that's really unusual. We were the original capital of French Louisiana, the second permanent settlement on the Gulf Coast, and the first French settlement. There's lots of really interesting things about Mobile.
Now, how would somebody go about booking a tour with you?
Sure. So you can go to the website. That's the best way, and that's at secrethistorytours.com.
He'll put it right down there, secrethistorytours.com.
Perfect.
Do you guys have any social media or anything along those lines?
Yeah, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, all the usual suspects.
Now, when somebody does a walking tour, are those things that are weather-oriented? In other words, or if it's rainy, do you guys do the umbrellas, just so people know,
Sure. In cases of extreme rain, we do cancel, but usually if there's a little light rain, I tell people just bring your umbrella and we'll have a good time.
Well, I appreciate it, Todd. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Todd Duren. Our featured guest tonight is the chef de cuisine of one of the hottest new restaurants in America. He grew up in South Alabama and now serves up some of the best food in New Orleans at Turkey and the Wolf. We caught up with Nathan Barfield via Skype, and here's that interview. So Nate, I understand you've got a really, really cool story. Can you tell us how you kind of got into cooking? And I was told it was partly because you grew up cooking on your parents' farm?
Yeah, we had about 10 acres of property in Alabama and did a lot of it wasn't as much of a farm as we had a garden and chickens, but it was very rural. And so did a lot of cooking with my mom out of the garden and stuff. But then I went to college, thought I was going to be a lawyer. Turned out I wasn't going to be a lawyer. And then I needed a job, so then I started cooking in restaurants after I graduated from Alabama.
So you grew up in South Alabama. What are some of your fondest memories of growing up in Southern Alabama?
Really just enjoyed, being outside. Me and my siblings, there was a lot of running around barefoot in the woods and playing, war and all kinds of stuff. Did a lot of camping and things with the Boy Scouts, and yeah, just enjoyed the nature and kind of the rural aspect of South Alabama.
And you're in New Orleans now, right?
In New Orleans now, yeah.
Now, I was told that you had the opportunity to meet Harper Lee. Which
I did when I was in high school. I honorarily inducted her into our National Honor Society, got my picture taken with her. And she was pretty nice. She's pretty reclusive, so...
very reclusive.
Yeah.
I actually became a lawyer because I had read To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's what made me want to be a lawyer. At some point, you wanted to be a lawyer, but then you decided to shift away from that, go into food service. How did that come about?
Yeah, the summer before I was set to graduate, I had applied to law school. I had gotten accepted to law school, but then I did an internship with a lawyer, and I was going to do criminal defense. Mm-hmm. And then it was just kind of a situation where I felt like people hired a lawyer because they thought they were going to not necessarily, go to jail or have the repercussions, obviously innocent until proven guilty, but the expectation was that they might not, if they had committed the crime, might be able to get away with it because they hired a lawyer. And I just didn't necessarily feel comfortable with accepting people's money and doing those kind of things without kind of living up to their expectations and that kind of thing. Criminal
defense is it's tricky that way, and you're faced with in different areas of law you're faced with different types of ethical dilemmas on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So now you're the chef de cuisine at one of the premier restaurants in America, Turkey and the Wolf. Two-part question. One, how did it come about? And two, for people who don't know, what exactly is the role of a chef de cuisine?
So I started working at Turkey and the Wolf about 2 weeks after they opened. Mason Hereford, the owner, he was one of the first people I met when I moved to New Orleans. And so when they first opened, I was looking for a job, and I went to their opening night, and I asked him, hey, do you need any employees, any cooks? And he was like, actually, no. But then they turned out they were really busy the first week, and so they called me back, and I got hired. And I've been there ever since. But chef de cuisine is kind of the person who runs the restaurant on a day-to-day basis. I guess technically he would be called the executive chef, and that's kind of like the figurehead, the person, and he's very, very present in like the direction of the menu and the things that we do. But for chef de cuisine, it's more like, day-to-day stuff. Also, just keeping up with the quality of everything and making sure everything's like headed in the right direction.
Got it. Now, have you made any changes to the menu at Turkey and the Wolf since you took over?
Actually, yeah. About a month ago, we put a cauliflower sandwich on the menu, which is actually the first menu item that's been on the menu that wasn't something that Mason developed.
Was that one of your creations?
Yeah, that was mine. So cauliflower with olive salad and like a goat cheese spread and some fresh basil and onions. So yeah, that's the first menu item ever in the three-year history of Turkey and the Wolf that was developed by someone not Mason. So.
Great. Tell me all about that on a day that I have not yet had lunch. Now, what do you think has made Turkey and the Wolf become a hit just so quickly? I mean, it's really like boom, 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 right?
Yeah. I think that we play to people's sense of nostalgia. You know, we serve things like fried bologna sandwiches that are something that people in the South are very familiar with eating. But, you know, we have a butcher in town named Leanne that she makes the bologna for us, so it's not like Oscar Mayer bologna. And then we make like a nice mustard to go on it and that kind of thing. So it's not your typical bologna sandwich you'd have, but it's still, you know, rooted in memories. And so when people look at it, they're like, you know, this is familiar to me, but I'm excited that it's something a little bit different as well.
Yeah, it's like pimento and cheese. You know, you can you there's something that you grow up with on that, and then there are places that I've seen do like really nifty things with pimento and cheese, and you go, wow, how did they make something that was just so commonplace when I was a kid so awesome? You know what I mean?
And also, you know, sandwiches are really easy in terms of, not in terms of making sandwiches, because it's hard to combine things onto bread when you only can, you know, charge $10 or $11 for them. So you have to work within certain parameters. But once you've like recipe tested and come up with the sandwich, it's easy to keep your quality when you're doing sandwiches because a lot of the stuff is made ahead of time and then you're just assembling it.
Now, what menu item is your most popular right now, and which is your personal favorite, actually?
I would say the bologna sandwich is probably the most popular. It's just very, you know, we live in a time where people like to take pictures of their food, so it's very photographable just because of its sheer size. But I would say the best menu item is the collard green sandwich, which is kind of the one that made us famous. It's vegetarian, but it's very savory. And whenever the editor of Bon Appetit came and ate the sandwich, he later in the article they wrote about us declared it the best sandwich that he had ever eaten. So that one's kind of a unexpected thing just because of the word collard greens on it, but it's very good.
Well, Nate, we are going to take a break. We're going to go to commercials for just a few minutes so we can pay some bills, and then we're going to be right back with Nate.
Great.
And we are back with Nate from Turkey and the Wolf. Hey, so I was going to ask you this. I asked this of a lot of chefs. What are some of your favorite things to cook when you're not working? I mean, are you always experimenting at home with things?
Yeah, I like to experiment some, but I mostly like to cook things that are relatively simple, kind of hearty single pot dishes like pot roast or some sort of soup or things like that that are, you know, I can kind of put them on the stovetop or put them in the oven and then walk away from them and come back and they're ready. So it's not very labor intensive when I'm at home.
When you're coming up with something new, how do you have a process you go through for that?
Yeah, you know, our kitchen is very diplomatic. Anybody who works there, that be it me or the person that started, you know, weeks ago, they are welcome to any particular idea that they have for a dish that, you know, they can come up, they can kind of workshop it. And then, you know, they make one, we all taste it, then we kind of like go around in a circle and, you know, give opinions and kind of go from there.
Now, do you grow any of your own food like your parents did?
I have a little garden in the back of my house. right now I have a bunch of mustard greens in it, and I've been using those in salads and things, but I don't have a ton of space. But when I was growing up, we were kind of all in charge of one particular thing in the garden. So I did a lot of that growing up and try to do some now, but just space-wise, I don't have a ton of space to do a full garden.
Now, I also like to try to ask, almost every chef that I interview this, what are some of your best tips for ordinary people like me who just want to up their cooking game? Are there any principles that you particularly swear by?
I think, it's just more than anything, it's kind of, things that you have at restaurants that you're generally like, oh, those are really good. They're high in acid, high in salt, things like that. So I try to, when I'm cooking, just season things in a way that you want to go right up to the line without crossing over the line and be like, oh, that's too salty or too acidic, that kind of thing. But generally, I'd say for home cooks, season things probably more than you might think that they need to be seasoned.
Last, I know that there are a lot of chefs who travel different places to learn different types of influences. Is that something that you've done or that you have intentions of doing at some point?
Yeah, we travel quite a bit. We've done, I think I traveled like 7 times last year. I went to LA, Chicago, Austin, just every place we go, we try to eat out as much as possible and just try as many new things as we can and, use those as inspiration, because there's always people out there who are, doing things and that from a perspective that you don't necessarily have. So you can try and take them, make them into your own thing and kind of use them for what you want to do. And generally, as long as you're not outright just stealing someone's dish, people are pretty open to, talking about techniques and ingredients and those kind of things, because that's just kind of the fraternity of cooking. Everybody just is real into it and wants to share the stuff that they're doing.
And you never know where you're going to find something that's incredible. For example, I stumbled upon some incredible barbecue in Saraland, Alabama once.
Yeah.
And you'd
exactly.
think you'd find it in the main part of the city, but nope, outskirts, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nate. Ladies and gentlemen, Nate Barfield.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care. I'd like to thank Todd Duren with Secret History Tours, as well as Nathan Barfield with Turkey and the Wolf, and Josh helping us with the sound tonight, kind of on short notice with Vista Event Productions. And taking us home tonight, Tyler and the Absolutes.